everybody, it's Dawn and welcome back. Hope you've all had a good weekend and ready for another week ahead. And today we're going to kick off the week, well, our artistic week anyway, and I'm going to use 3 different basic watercolour techniques to finish off this tree. Now I've set the scene, so to speak, and we're going to do some more work to the trunk. So I will be doing some other bits just to finish off the scene, but the star of the show is going to be this lovely big tree trunk. So we're going to start off with wet on dry, which basically means it's what it says on the tin. It's wet paint on dry paper, or an undercoat. So the undercoat is dry. The next layer is going to be wet on dry. Simple, isn't it? Whoever said that watercolour was complicated? It's not. It's other people that make it complicated. So all I'm going to do, I beg your pardon, you can't see what I'm doing. I prepared this overnight, you see. So what I did, because I wanted this to be dry, I left all my paints out. So this morning they've gone a bit hard, so I've had to rehydrate them. So I'm using yellow ochre here and a spot of burnt sienna. No, it's not, it's burnt umber, I beg your pardon. Yellow ochre and burnt umber. And I'm going to make a little puddle of fairly wet paint to go on there. A little bit more burnt umber maybe. And I'm going to put my palette down there. And all we're going to do is use our brush and go over it fairly dilute. We don't want this too thick because we want the base coat to still show through a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. But we're going to paint this on. Now that'll stay wet for a little while, which is just as well because the next technique is wet into wet, which is wet paint into wet paint. It couldn't be much easier, could it? So what we're going to do, we're going to pick up, while this is all still wet, in fact I'm going to grab a smaller brush for this, because we're going to put the details on all while it's still wet so that it's nice and soft. And it's the same mix of yellow ochre and burnt sienna, but this time we're going to put in some more burnt sienna. We're just going to make it a bit stronger. So I'm going to make a darker puddle up over here, just over here in this corner. So pick up a bit more. It's still a bit sticky from where I'd left it last night, but it'll be all right. It'll be fine. So what we're going to do, we're going to just put some marks in while it's still wet. That might be a bit too wet, but that's all right. Just dab it out and start again. So while it's all still nice and soft, we're just going to pick up some more paint. You can see it blending in. It's really nice. It's a nice technique to watch, this wet in wet. Well, I think it is anyway. I like watching the wet in wet. And you can just soften it in, just like that. And it will add a little bit of texture. So as it's drying out, you can just use the tip of the brush to add a little bit more texture. We're not going to go too mad with this, she says. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up a piece, just some neatish burnt umber and go straight in, just to add some of these lovely bark textures. So I'll show you what I'm doing. Not too wet. So this is neat and very thick because it's been out overnight, burnt umber. So I'll just pick it up like that. And all that is quite dry actually, but all while this bit is still wet. Just tap it in like that, or just gently stroke it in. And you get that very subtle bark pattern, which looks really nice. And then what we're going to do, just to enhance that beautiful bark, we're going to take a flat brush this time, and we're going to do a dry brush technique. Now it's not quite as cut and dried. We're not literally going to use a dry brush, because if we do that, all we're going to get is horrible globs of paint. But what we are going to do, we're going to wet the brush. We're going to, shall I bring it in a bit? We're going to use our fingers to squeeze it out. Then what we're going to do, we're just going to dab. If I bring this, I've got some kitchen roll over here. We're going to dab, just gently, the excess water from our brush. And then we're going to paint, but without dipping back in again, because now the brush is reasonably dry. It's just slightly damp. It's really a slightly damp brush, or some people call it a thirsty brush. So we're just going to pick up, without adding any more water, a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of yellow ochre. That'll do probably. And what we're going to do, we're going to use the flat of our brush. These flat brushes are brilliant. You can use them in all sorts of different ways, but we're going to use the flat of the brush just to add just a few streaks. Just like that. You can use a thing called a rake brush if you want to, but perhaps we'll get into that another time. So that will just add just that little bit more texture. So maybe even a bit drier. So dab it out again. Pick up some, have a virtually dry brush, almost literally a dry brush. And pick up some dry paint and streak like that. And you get these lovely soft streaks. Now if the undercoat was dry, you'd see those streaks even more, but that'll do for now, I think. So just to finish this off, otherwise it looks more like a telegraph pole than it does a tree trunk. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pop that back in there, grab my large round brush again, and once more, we're just going to grab some yellow ochre and burnt umber and mix up a bit of a puddle there. Not too much, because all we're going to do to finish off this little scene, it's only a very simple scene, we're going to paint a branch just coming out like that. Maybe with a couple of smaller branches, nothing too fancy. But then I'm going to show you a brush we've not used yet on this channel. Now this is a specialist brush, I guess you call it. Now this is called a golden leaf brush, and it was designed by the late and wonderful Terry Harrison. Sadly, Terry's no longer with us, but his website lives on, and you can get these brushes still from his website. And if you're interested in his brushes, I will link his website down below. It's easy. All you do is you go onto it and click brushes. It's very easy to follow. So it's idiot proof for people like me that are no good at websites. So anyway, I'm going to use that just to finish up. I'm going to show you how, because you might be interested in these brushes. If you haven't got one or similar, I don't think you can, I've never seen brushes like this anywhere else. So the star of the show really is this. But I just wanted to show you how we use this to create texture. You dip it in your water, but what you do is you don't have this too wet. So just squeeze it out like that. Not all of that, but just so that it's a damp brush. Maybe dab it out on your tissue. Just pop the tissue out the way for a minute. And I'm going to pick up a fairly thick dollop, another technical term straight in there for you, dollop. This is sap green, and to darken it a bit, I'm going to go straight in with some yellow ochre. And of course, yellow ochre and sap green makes olive green. So we're just going to tap that in there, just like that. And we're just going to finish off this tree. And all you do with this, while it's still not too wet, is you dab. And if you don't have it too wet, you get this beautiful texture, which is what these brushes were designed to do. So really, this was all about the tree trunk. This painting was really all about the tree trunk. So I thought, well, while we've got it here, I'll finish off the scene and show you how to use some of these other speciality brushes that I like to use. They're not compulsory, you don't have to have them, but I like to use them because they're such fantastic aids to painting trees. And if you're going to be painting landscapes, sooner or later you're going to need to painting trees. And I tell you, there aren't many brushes that impress me, but these ones do. They make painting landscapes and trees so much easier. The times I've been asked to critique brushes, and I'd really rather not, but these ones I'm happy to. I haven't been asked to do this one, but I'm going to anyway. So there you go. That's just you can even go further than that if you want and build it up further, but this is really about the tree trunk. And the only thing I am going to do, again, with the same brush, is just squeeze it out, because it's a bit too wet. And again, we're just going to, well, first of all, we're going to put the water out the way. Pick up some more green, like that. Splosh it in, just to finish off at the bottom of this painting. And again, just a little bit more yellow ochre. Yellow ochre, what's left of the sap green. And if you want to make it a bit darker, just add some very dry. This is cobalt blue. And what we're going to do, which you can use this for grasses as well, for long grasses. So you can just flick up here at the bottom. So you can do some nice rough patchy grasses. Let's just try and make that a bit darker. Right, the blue's gone a bit hard. So, oh, that's better. So nice patchy grasses, and we'll do a bit darker at the top of this tree, but we're not going to take that any further because the real star of the show is this wonderful tree trunk. So there you go. There is our tree trunk with a bit of a background and a little bit of foreground as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this and found it useful. So that's really covered just about all, if not most, of the main basic techniques. We might be doing a few others as we go along. But when I come back on Thursday, we're going to be getting into painting specific elements in our landscape. And we are going to be painting some rocks. So I hope you can come back and join me for that. And I will show you how I create texture, how I paint texture on rocks so that they're not just a flat wash, but how they're nice and textured. So I hope you can join me for that, and indeed you find it helpful. And until then, enjoy your week, have a great time, stay safe, and as always, happy painting. And I'll see you very soon. Bye bye for now.